Okay, what I'm going to show you now is not really an effect, but it's incredibly important to getting good, clean, punchy tracks. And it's an important part of processing that has nothing to do with a digital effect, but has everything to do with editing. Now, we're looking at a drum track here. These are actually the WAV files from that drum kit. Have a listen. Now, one of the things I want you to notice here, we've got the tom tracks. Let me move this over so you can see. Left tom and right tom. Here are the tom tracks. And here's how they progress as the song goes on. Okay, we're at almost a minute into the song before we see the first tom hit. And there it is. Mostly on the right tom track, but yet, of course, you can hear a little bit on the hi-hat track of all tracks. Drums will bleed through. So what this is more about is editing to create clarity so that you have less drum bleed through. Drums are very loud, and they're going to end up on microphones you don't want them on, where they might not actually sound that good. So what I'm going to show you here is how to edit, and it's generally the same for any recording program. Might be done a little bit differently, but it's the same concept. And the idea here is to remove tracks or sound in there that you don't necessarily need or will not be using. Then when we get into processing them, for instance, if we want to put a reverb on this tom, and we don't do this editing, that reverb's going to be on all that snare that's bleeding through, which we may not want at all. So before you can actually sometimes do the processing you need to do, you may need to do some editing. Now let's look at that a little bit more closely. And we're looking at the tom hit, and we're seeing a couple of other hits before it. Let's take a listen. Okay. As he's going into that roll, he's hitting the snare first. So, by taking the scissors and cutting that, we actually can remove all that extraneous sound all the way up to the beginning there. Now, here's what I recommend. Instead of just cutting and erasing a part, you can delete it. That's one way to do it. Just turn it off so you always have it. This will also free up some CPU if you're not using CPU for that part. Also, hard drive usage, because the digital data doesn't have to be pulled back off the hard drive anymore. So you're also giving your system a little more power by doing this. Now let's take a listen to that. And we're going to go over to the other tom track here and do the same thing. Now we're actually going to cut it in the same place, even though we're not seeing a whole lot of signal there. We want to keep some consistency here in terms of those parts. Okay, play it back. So we can hear that the part itself, the tom is still playing to about here. So we're going to cut that on both channels and turn it off all the way up to the next hit on both those channels. Now once again, we're just turning off the track. We're not erasing anything, which means we can go back and change anything we want. Now what we're going to do to make this more natural is actually restructure the decay on that tom hit like this. So it's actually fading out to a dead fade out before the next hit comes in, which it doesn't do on its own, of course. We're going to do that on both tracks. And now let's take a listen to that. Very natural. So now if we chose to put some reverb on that, which we could, it wouldn't affect the rest of the kit.